You're listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast, celebrating hunting dog heritage, competition, and community. United Kennel Club has been the hunting dog sports home for coonhounds, beagles, retrievers, pointers, cur, feist, and more for over 125 years. Hey, good morning.
It is.
Welcome.
It is
Yeah.
a good morning.
Alan Gingrich here with Todd Kellam, Vice President of UKC. We have a special guest here, Todd Morgan, with us today. And welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. We're going to do a deep dive today on this first one. Kind of do a segment for our Beagle program. And I want to get into the history, a deep dive of the history of the hunting Beagle program.
Going back a few years.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to
We
be
can
good
remember all the names.
Yeah. So, Todd Kellam, you started in 1988, so that's been 30-some years. So tell us a little bit about your introduction to UKC.
Well, introduction to UKC. So I was coon hunting before I got hired here, and that's how I got to know some of the staff at UKC. And we talked about that on the last episode, so I won't go back through that again. But when I got hired, it was May of 88. And it was with the idea that at that point, they already had an idea. They wanted to get a Beagle program started. So I was working with Steve Fielder and, not only helping on the coonhound side of things, but also starting from scratch with the hunting Beagle program. And I can remember the first thing that we did was we invited a committee that came to UKC and met at UKC just to discuss, is there a need for this in the world, hunting Beagle world? Is there, what is our opportunities? How would we go at it?
Like
I was trying to remember who was on that committee. Now I remember a guy named Jeff Garrison, and he was a Beagler from the Deep South. That's where I got my first two Beagles from. It's Jeff. He gave me two male Beagle pups. But Howard Delcamp was on that.
I know Howard.
He's a Beagler in northern Indiana. John Wick was on that committee. Just as someone that knows houndsmen all around the country.
Yeah.
I was trying to think if I'm missing anybody. I'm sure that I am.
Yeah.
So we had that first meeting here, and the crew kind of decided that, hey, a format similar to our coonhound format, which was highly successful, could maybe work for Beagles.
Yeah, which is what they call hound and hunter format now. These days is what they call it. I don't know where that started, but eventually that's what they do call it now.
Yeah. So that was the model, and we still did not know if it would work. But we drew up these mock scorecards, and we just went out to the field and started putting time down with dogs to see if it would work.
Yeah.
And it did, but there was a lot of changes early.
Sure. We'll get into some of that stuff, but Todd Morgan, eventually you came into it as well, and we'll get into that as well. But what was it, around 96 maybe when you came on board?
Yep.
1996.
1996, I believe, is when I started.
Yeah.
3 days after opening day of gun season, made sure that when I transitioned to my new job, I got the first 3 days of deer season before I started.
Yeah, so you two guys already knew each other at that time, right?
Yep, Todd's married to my sister.
Okay.
Yep, that's how I knew Todd. We went to the same high school together, but he was a couple of years older than me, so I didn't really know him through school, more through dating my sister and being married to my sister.
Yeah.
But that's what I was going to say. He was involved in the hunting Beagle program from the very first day that I was.
I remember going out with your Beagles and carrying those mock scorecards out behind your old house on 34th Street, and you explaining the rules to me, and then we'd do something, you'd explain them. I'm like, that's not the way you just explained it a minute ago. It was so new that we couldn't remember, which was the right rule or not.
Yeah. So let's back up just a little bit. What was your first experience with Beagles, or when did you first get into Beagles?
I tell you exactly the first day I got my first Beagle, because Todd had to go pick it up for me because I was in the hospital in a wreck.
That's right.
And he had to go pick it. So he went and got my Beagle while I was laying in the hospital bed. And so when I couldn't wait to get out of that hospital. First, the food wasn't good, and I wanted to get home and see my new Beagle.
Was that Clipper?
Clipper.
So like,
dog could run a deer like nobody's business.
Seahome?
Yep, from Roger Seahome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like whenabouts was that?
3 or 4 years before I started. So,
so early 90s. Huh?
Yeah, probably. If we could look and see when the first ever UKC hunt was, probably a year.
Were you running him in that hunt?
Yeah, I ran him in that hunt, but we ran with. I mean, I'd come over and I'd call Todd up at work and say, "Can I take your Beagles out?" And he had it great. His dogs were in good shape. I'd get out of work every day and go run his Beagles just for fun.
Yeah.
So what were some of those first Beagles you guys had?
So the first two that I had, that I said I got from Jeff when I didn't know anything about Beagle bloodlines, quite honestly, at that point. It's all brand new. Mine, I called them Boone and Crockett, two little litter mate males, right? And they started real easy, I remember, and Crockett just naturally was my favorite dog. He was a little, smoother running and better conformation, nice mouth. And so I ended up selling the Boone dog to Bob Wardinger, and still hunted with him for years. But so Crockett became my dog, and that's the dog that I handled.
Yeah. Made him a champion, right?
Yeah. And he was a lot of people put points on him. Todd put points on him. Fielder put points on him. I mean, he was
community dog,
easy dog to call. And
most trash-proof dog I ever saw in my life.
Really?
You couldn't get him to run anything but a rabbit.
Mm.
Yeah, that puppy ran a deer the second day he started. The first day he ran a rabbit. He was, 7 months old. The next day, I was all excited, and he run a deer. And the next day, I put an e-collar on him and bumped him with that. And that is the last deer that dog ran in the rest of his life.
Pretty trainable
I could
dog,
turn him into a pack of deer dogs, couldn't I?
Yeah.
If that dog came back
and sat by you
and come back to the group or the cast, everybody else was like, damn.
Yeah. So what were some of your first dogs?
The first dog I had was that dog Clipper that we were talking about that he picked up for me. And I had him for a long time, and I got tired of.
He was Texas T. bred.
Birch Lake, Texas T son.
Yeah.
And then I actually bought a Round Pond Mr. T female I called Kate, and I had her. And
Gosh,
then
those are some old names.
Yeah, Round Pond Mr. T.
Yeah.
That dog been gone a long time. But then Bob Wardinger again had a female that wanted to breed to Clipper, and I ended up with that dog I had called Samantha.
Oh.
And that's how I got her. So the first two weren't exactly what I wanted. She was exactly what I wanted. I got out of there, and then there's 100 since then.
Come and go.
Yeah. But yes, Clipper and Samantha were probably my first two that were my favorites in the early days.
So when I started here, I used to hear these stories about you guys going out and running dogs. Had like a week league or something. What was that about?
That was with Travis Allen and Chuck Foreman and Steve Bell and Josh McLean. We'd go down to Mendon.
Donnie and Eric and Charlie.
Yeah, Donnie. Yeah, Eric and Charlie. And what we'd do is we'd make a bonfire on this big piece of secluded property. It was all surrounded by farm fields. So it was
This
safe.
was during the week, right?
Yeah, Thursday night league, or it could have been Monday. And the rule was last dog into the fire won. If your dog quit and came in, you had to put it in the box, and you were done for the night.
Those had to be some all-nighters, weren't they?
Yes, if you had a deer runner, you won every time because your dog wasn't coming back.
See, but I remember we would take turns hosting it, so we weren't always running at the same
spot.
We did a couple at Bruce Loker's farm in
South Farm there. Yeah,
and then Donnie and Eric would hold one down. Well, their running spots, and whoever was hosting it would have some kind of food, for around the fire to cook on the fire, and
that was an every week thing.
As much as we could.
Yeah, during spring running season. Yeah. But then the fun part was and it's at some point with Owen and Will, we started having points, right?
Yeah,
we had a point schedule, and then it seems I'll never forget. But one of those years, we had a tie on the last night. I think Crockett might have come in second to the last, and I don't remember if it was Will or Owen. Their dog came in last, so that gave him the most points, which put him in a tie with me. So we decided, okay, this is a great idea for a tiebreaker. All year we've been awarding the most points. The dog to come in last.
Yeah.
When we had that tiebreaker, one of the guys took both the dogs that were involved in the tie, and they took them out a couple 100 yards, and the first dog in won. So now we're out there calling and here, like you got a jumped rabbit. Oh, Crockett was
always the first one.
Oh yeah.
Mind you, we weren't using a scorecard for any of this.
No, this was just making up rules as you go. But
So no arguments or nothing like that.
It was
Though.
more about the fun of being there than it was and listening to the dogs run than any rules.
Yeah.
Some lighted collars we tried.
Yeah.
So what were some of your better hounds? Probably Crockett. You've talked about
that's-
Crockett a lot. He was one of your better ones.
Yeah, I don't think I've even had a dog after him, really. So
Yeah, and then for you, Righty's the one I remember the most, but you also had a female, Gertie, maybe?
Yeah, Flint Creek Gertie I got from Scott Cummins. That by far was the best dog I ever owned.
That's a name I remember early on, Scott Cummins, because
Yeah.
my dog was off of one of his females too.
Here's an old name for you too. She was out of the Elms Jigs Maggie's mate.
Oh yeah,
that's an old time dog, Canadian field champion that she was out of. She was a large pack dog and didn't have enough foot, and bought her just on Scott's word, and I think I lost one cast ever with her, and it was a winner's pack. If it was with the new rules, I mean, I think I won like 18 champion casts in a row with her and never put a champion win on her.
Wow.
Because back then you'd have 4, 5, 6 casts of champions at every hunt, but she'd win every weekend. She finished as a hunting beagle champion with no wins towards grand.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah.
And I had grands, but she was better than they were. But Righty, that dog too. He wasn't the same caliber hound she was, but he produced some really nice puppies, some that went on to win at the Nationals and Challenge Series and things like that. And actually, they were out of Gertie and Righty, the ones that won it. So
I looked at the records the other day on Righty, because that's the one I remember most, but it looked like he produced like 15 champions maybe.
I think so.
Pretty good reproduction record.
Early on with the top producers, he was on the list, but I'm sure he's way off since
I'm not sure if he is or not, but
I'm sure he's probably off by now. Hopefully he is. All these years later, hopefully somebody's beat it.
Yeah. So back in those days, did you trial in UKC a lot before you started working here, or did that mostly come after you started working?
Oh, I went every weekend.
From the start.
Yeah. Todd and I drove down to Dog Hollow. Is it Dog Hollow Beagle Club in St. Louisville with Gerald and Mike Majors?
Oh yeah.
Stayed at Gerald's house for the second ever UKC trial. We didn't make the one in Maryland.
Maryland was the first ever one.
Let's talk about that. Let's back up and talk about how with the evolution of the trials. So even before the Maryland, that was May of 1990, first event. Even before that, we were having preliminary hunts. Remember? And I was thinking about those on my way in here today.
Just non-licensed.
Non-licensed. We tried some clubs to say, here, try put on an event, see if it works for you. Raccoon Club of Maryland was one of them.
Yep.
They were holding some preliminaries. Bellevue, Wolverine State Coon Hunters Club. And I was laughing. We had some fun times at those preliminaries. You remember Steve Irons? I'll never forget it. We're out there in front of the clubhouse getting ready to get your cast assembled and go somewhere. And he walks up with his beagle in this long-handled fishing net that's like 6 foot tall with a hoop that's 3 foot on it. He's got his beagle and this fishing net, and we're like, what? And he says, that's how I catch my beagle. No, he's just, he's joking, of course, but that was so funny. He's like, that's my beagle catcher. But so we had quite a few preliminary hunts, and then it came time to launch it. We'd changed the rules as much as we could, and that's when Raccoon Club of Maryland held the first one, May of 1990, and then Todd and I went to.
So why Maryland? Did you have guys involved from the state of Maryland?
They were some of the ones that showed the most interest early. Yeah. Ed and Brian Weinset, they kind of headed things up out there, and that was a strong club.
Yeah, they ended up hosting the Nationals a couple of years
later. So did you have field reps right out of the gate, or not really?
No, not really. Nope.
Yeah, because
probably not till Todd came.
I think I hired the original group of field reps.
Did you? I think so too.
Ed was one of those originals.
Yep, he was one of them. Yeah. And then his son Brian after he. But
what other clubs do you remember other than Dog Hollow and Raccoon Club of Maryland?
I mean, we Albion Beagle Club.
Oh,
they were early in Northern Indiana.
Dave Hill, wasn't it?
Dave Hill, that was my hometown club.
Yep, I remember going down there, a lot of early ones. Onstead over in Michigan was an early one.
Langsburg.
Yeah, Langsburg, Looking Glass, wherever, with Eugene Cares up there. They put
Bible Grove was pretty early.
Sherry St. John
Bible Grove
was up there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's out in Missouri, it got strong out there. There are a lot of early ones out there. I mean, of course, being from Michigan, I didn't go to Missouri quite a lot. But it was some The local ones, those are the old ones I can
So-
remember.
You got to remember too, and I think this may have been not the way to approach it, but we did at the time. We were kind of pushing it on our coon club because we had such a big network, and it was like, hey, if you want to add on a beagle hunt, to your coon hound event, you can have it for free. We're just trying to get events going, and now with hindsight, I don't think that was the way those clubs just weren't successful.
It was a natural way to start it, but after
Yeah.
it did it, they enjoyed bringing all the money in from these beagle hunts because they're getting 3 times the amount of dogs as the coon hunts because it was new.
Yeah.
And they were taking in 3 times the amount of money, and the beaglers got no say in the coon club.
Yeah.
So after a while, the beaglers are like, we had our state hunt, we had trophies this tall. We want to put on a state hunt, big trophies, and we want to do these different things. So then they just naturally started moving away from the coon
And
clubs.
that's kind of what happened here with us.
Yeah.
Bellevue became Cal-Val Beagle.
Yep. We all used to drive all the way over to Bellevue and then drive 30 minutes back over here to guide.
Wait, what was it before it was Cal-Val when we were down in
Lower Michigan Beagle
That's
Gun Dog
right, that's
Association.
right.
Hey,
No,
I was driving around the
Oh, it's
other.
had like 8 names over some of the meetings we've had. But
I was driving around just this last weekend. Was half lost where I was. Went down some back roads. I was at my brother's house, I think. No, going to my brother's house up in Leonidas there. And I came by where the old Cal-Val Beagle Club used to be. That old schoolhouse on
Yeah.
the corner there.
Yeah.
I recognized it.
yeah, because
It's still there.
a VFW hall. wasn't
Yeah,
it?
something like that.
Yeah. We were at
It's
a
like on a
VFW
T,
hall.
on the end of
we were
a
at
T road.
Yeah, we were at a horse show arena. We were at Charlie Martin's barn. We were a lot of different places with that club.
Yeah.
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 Good group of guys. So
Yeah. So
Fun time.
those early years, like how many events did you have a year?
I don't.
You got the computer.
I mean, it started. Yeah, I don't. That's why I asked what were the early clubs. I don't remember how many events there would be. But Todd hit on something that they had good entries
Yeah.
because it was new and people would travel to see it. And
And there weren't so many.
it's kind of
them.
like our shed dog now. It's new and people travel to go.
Well, that's how it was when I was in it. There was nothing for us to drive to Holmesville just for a regular event or Bible Grove in Illinois, down to St. Louisville. Used to go down there a lot.
So I think it grew quick enough, as far as your question on numbers, that by 1992 we were all ready to have our first national.
Yeah, yeah.
So our first hunting beagle national championship, I believe, was in '92
It
Yeah.
was.
at
It was.
Holmesville.
Yeah,
I
but-
didn't get to participate because I was Master Hounds at it.
Really?
Of course you were, because he was involved. He was, aside from myself, you were probably the most involved in the rules and the application of,
Yeah. So
Judging.
do you guys remember some of the first winners?
Well, I know Swafford's Ace won the
Yeah.
first national.
Yeah, but I'm talking
Yeah.
just regular trials.
some of the dogs. That
Yeah.
were,
Wineset's-
Like the one in Maryland.
Wineset's Brownie or something, was it?
oh, that was.
Ed Wineset won the first hunt out there, didn't he? Or no?
I forget Ed's good dog.
I know who won the second one, Pat Tappenden, because he laid it on me and Roy Swafford in the winner's pack. Tappenden's Hank tore us up that day.
Yeah. So, but wasn't he one of the first champions?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Pat
he
Tappenden.
was.
I know he was the first grand. I'm not, but I don't. Didn't
No, it
Bill
was-
Sawyer had the first grand? That
Bill's
Angel.
Reverend
Yeah.
Sawyer.
Yeah, he had the first champion, and Tappenden had the first grand.
Well,
Yeah, who else
I had the
was it that ran?
400th, I think.
Who had Prince?
Oh,
From-
Doc.
No, from Coldwater.
Oh, it's Don Sexton.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Sexton's Coldwater
So he-
Prince.
A lot of those guys down there, Roy and Pat and them,
Yeah,
they got a pups from
Nate
Sexton.
Butler and all those
Yeah.
guys. Those
so
yeah,
you
guys.
mentioned the first nationals, 1992, and I have it right here. I have was in Holmesville, Ohio, Kilbuck. Was
Yep,
it Kilbuck?
yep.
Yes.
at a coon club.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
And yeah, that club's still there.
Yep.
Still have events there. Yeah, I see Swafford's Ace won it. Roy Swafford. He had to be young at that time. Still wasn't
Well,
he?
see, I would say Ace was older at that time because
No, I'm
he-
talking about Roy.
Roy
he was
was
just
young.
a kid.
Roy was young, but Roy and my first introduction to running beagle, the first time I ever hunted with a beagle was with Roy at a Bellevue Coon Club meeting before I was ever hired.
Well,
here.
his mom and dad used to run that club,
Yeah,
didn't they?
Dad was the president of the club, so
Yeah.
Roy and I would show up. They'd have a club meeting, and we'd just take the beagles out back of the clubhouse and run. I didn't sit through the club meetings,
Yeah.
And God, we had fun. And then, so, yeah, that was Ace and what was his other dog?
Jack.
Yeah, Jack.
Ace and Jack. Yep.
So that was the two little males he was running. And then, so by the time this whole thing got going, the rules got established, we had hunts. And by the time we had a national, Ace had to be pretty old by that time.
Oh, I'd say, yeah. 4 or 5 year old dog at least.
Oh, I'd say more.
Yeah.
7, 8.
That I always remember about that nationals is when I met my best friend I ever had in Beagle. And it didn't start out good.
Really?
Me and Dale Prunty.
Really? That's where you met Dale?
Yep, started out in an argument.
Huh.
And it was over measuring a dog, and I thought, I don't like that guy, and he ended up being my best friend ever in Beagles.
Oh.
So,
isn't that interesting how that works?
yeah.
When you say argument, I bet it was more like a discussion, knowing Dale.
No, it was me and Roy against Dale, and Dale said, "Come on, boys, hold on." Me and Roy being upset and being hotheads, and Dale tried to calm it down. But yeah, he.
Yeah. I remember Roy. He could be a little. He could.
I couldn't be. I was always calm.
So, like at the first nationals, like what kind of entry did you have? Do you remember?
Do you remember?
I think it was like 250 or something, or
Really?
300. It was big.
Oh.
Yeah, I've never seen that many Beagles in one spot.
So,
in my
did you
life.
have a grand class already by then?
Yeah.
That probably wasn't very big. Obviously,
No,
the
it's
smallest
mostly
one,
registered, but
yeah.
I mean the program was a couple of years old, so there's some dogs finished.
Yeah.
How many years were you Master Hounds at it?
Couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, not as many as some
Then-
of these guys have done now, but I eventually wanted to run my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And then who were some of the, I can't remember who the other Master Hounds were that after you.
I'm pretty sure.
I mean, Roy did probably the longest stint
Yeah,
of anybody.
Roy Swafford.
Yeah.
Dale Prunty did a lot of them.
Okay, that's
He
right.
did a lot of them. Almost the whole time I was at UKC, Dale did almost every nationals. He was a master of hounds.
Okay.
Yeah, he did
Okay.
even after, and basically until until he passed there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was good at that table. He kept everybody calm.
And he loved it.
Yeah.
He loved it. I don't think there was any. We'll get it.
I think what he really loved is as soon as the cast went out, he made me take him to breakfast.
That was a rule violation.
Well, Dale was in charge.
Yeah.
It was his call, not mine.
So let's move on a little bit here. What was? How did you come about the decision to hire Todd?
Yeah, so what was it? Had Steve moved to into media, what is now known as
Yeah.
media?
Yeah.
And so that opened up a position in the field ops department. I couldn't do all the coonhounds and beagles. So I'm positive that's when that happened. So that was what, 96?
Yeah.
And then we had some more help too along the way, Dooley and some other coonhound managers.
Yeah.
Tom Dooley.
Yeah. So what were you doing prior to coming here?
I was a plant superintendent at a feed mill over in Battle Creek, Michigan. Didn't like it. All I wanted to do was get out of work and run beagles.
Yeah.
And then he told me there might be an opening there and nobody needed to relocate or anything. I could just drive the opposite way out of my driveway.
Well, he already knew the rules. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
It's kind of an easy decision, probably. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at some point, you had to learn the coonhound rules well enough to help on that stuff.
Yeah, because after I was here, I thought, I came in thinking I'm just going to talk about beagles and do beagle stuff all day. And then you figure out there's way more to do in the coonhound program. So I ended up learning all the coonhounds. I actually got some coonhounds from Ed Mead. And
Yeah.
I hunted a lot with those old blue dogs. And I championed one out for him, made one a night champion for him. You had to learn the coonhound rules
Well,
because
plus
there's not enough
we were
to do.
working. You had to help me work all the breed hunts on the road and Autumn
Yeah.
Oaks, Winter Classic, all those.
Yeah. So do you have any memories of those first days, weeks, and months starting here, working
I
here?
still remember that going in and sitting at my desk and nobody telling me what to do, and I just started working. Because I think you guys, what if
No
you were
training at
gone?
all.
Well, I mean, they're like, I think they go through these reports, and I already knew what they all were. So I mean, it was pretty natural the first day I came in. I kind of knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then the hardest part, really, that Todd helped me with the most was the writing. Early on, I'd say I wasn't a very good writer, and maybe I wasn't.
That's
at
what
the
he
end.
says
I don't
about
know.
me too. He says that about everybody. So.
But it's just, and writing's different. Everybody looks at things different, how they should word things. And But yeah, he helped me a lot with that. That was probably the hardest transition, writing all the magazine articles.
Yeah, I can relate to that. That's probably my biggest struggle too, and helped me out a lot, obviously, as well.
The events, those were easy,
Yeah.
and I had ideas before I came here what I wanted to do with the program and the direction.
You were
I
already
found.
very familiar with it at that point.
Yeah, I had a
No,
strong.
this was 96, right? 1996?
Yeah, and I had a strong opinion on it because I was going to a trial every day. So I had some things, and some of them I did, some of them weren't so good once I realized there were other views.
Yeah.
Remember back in the early days, talking about the rules a little bit, the big thing was the point system. I can remember every time there's a rules committee, it's like, oh, we got to discuss the speed and drive points, and there's going to be 5 different proposals on how to do speed and drive points.
And that's why it was nice to have Roy Swafford and Dale Pruney around, because they were adamant that we're not changing rules just to change rules. That, let's, just because we have a proposal doesn't mean we got to pass it. And that was good in those early days, or we'd have changed the style of dog in this every other year.
Yeah.
So it was good to have some people on there.
Consistency. And
yeah, Jeff Stacy, he was always a good one. That let's not just change the rules every year.
I remember when I first started, I want to say line points were still 100, 75, 50, and 25.
Yeah, if you had
that was huge.
If you didn't get the front, you might
Yeah.
as well go home back then.
Yeah, and I remember guys were pushing.
But
for
I also
more
remember
foot.
this in those early hunts, before people knew that point, if you don't have the front, you might as well go home. Before people knew that, they just brought a rabbit dog.
Yeah,
That's
And
what I did.
There was a wide variance on the speed and all the different things. And there was dogs that would win. Some of those dogs that didn't have a lot of foot, Abe,
yeah,
that Donnie ran, and
Yeah.
Hook that Will Plankenhorn ran. Those were not fast dogs, but on the right conditions, they killed you.
yeah.
That's what we had. You mentioned Howard Delcamp. Our stuff kind of came from his line of stuff, which was just a little slower, and our dogs didn't have enough foot. Didn't take us long to figure that out. But we had rabbit dogs, but they just couldn't.
But I think those were my favorite years of the program. And then when 10 years later, when the dogs are getting birdie footy, and mine was one of them, but these get too competitive, on the front.
Yeah.
And
Then you breed for something that didn't
it just
make you happy.
It
You breed
started
for
at
something.
some point to become
Yeah.
a style that I didn't really care for as much, maybe for my
Yeah.
personal dog.
Yeah. So, Todd, what were some of your first assignments? You remember some of your first projects you had when you came to UKC?
Yeah, one of the first things they wanted me to establish was something similar to the coonhound, Purina coonhound year-end deal.
Series?
Yeah, series. And we came up with a Beagle Challenge series. And when I did that, I'm like, oh, geez, I need some help. I need some field reps to help administer this. So I had, my first group of field reps with Dale and Roy and Jeff Stacy, Ed Wineset. I've got a couple of them wrote down here because I don't want to forget some of them. So I'm going to look at my notes. Dan Ward out in Missouri, Tim Richards in Maryland, Denny Dugan, Scott Cummins, those guys, they were my first group of field reps. I wasn't going to go down to North Carolina and try to administer events, so I have Jeff Stacy down there, to take care of it, and just because we put together some really good prize packages, and we wanted to make this thing nice, and so these guys not only were helping set up new clubs and kind of fielding questions in their area, but they were instrumental in getting the Beagle Challenge series going. So that was probably the biggest thing I did early on.
What year are we thinking that was?
Probably 98, 99, somewhere in there. And
and that was
so
a
the
big
series itself was made up of the larger events around the country.
right, all
Right.
your state championship
Right.
hunts and
State.
nationals, I think, were double points, and that was before the world hunt. And I knew going in there, that's what I wanted to start, was a world hunt. So, and I was a big. I didn't want to copy everything the coon hunters did, and I wanted to pull it away from the coon hunters, but the coon hunters had a lot of good things that they offered, so I wanted to get some of that stuff for the Beaglers.
But you also had the luxury of making some changes or seeing some things that you could change that weren't the same.
Right. Yeah, going in, initially they went to RQEs and they went to zones, they went to the finals, and
Well, I'm talking about the challenge series.
oh, the challenge series, yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, the challenge series compared to the Coonhounds was a lot smaller, of course, but I mean, there's definitely differences, and I mean, we didn't need to have a big year-end banquet with representatives there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you did, it was be a representative of one breed.
The one thing you did was separated the sexes.
Yeah, separated the sexes, and then we had juniors and seniors. So we had a division for the young dogs and the older dogs. And then I think it evolved into, to be in the juniors, you had to be litter registered. You know, so you couldn't single register your dog and run them as a junior.
That's
They
right.
had to be a litter registered dog. And that's what I always tried to push with all of the new programs, that you had to litter register.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that helps the registry. I mean, if anyone that thinks that UKC is getting rich off putting on beagle hunts,
Right.
that's, I mean,
It doesn't work like that, does it?
no, not for your few dollars a dog you pay at the end and your license
Right.
fee. It doesn't make a lot of money. It's a registry first and foremost. So that's why I always tried to, anything new that I started, I wanted the dogs to have to go through the full registration program.
So who were some of those first dogs that competed? Dogs, handlers, owners?
Barney Daly's got to be the biggest name you think of at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, initially it was Sexton and the Coldwater group. Pat.
On the local, but on the national stage,
Yeah,
you'd have to say Barney
But that was a
Daly.
few years later.
Yeah.
It was a few years later. I
Yeah.
don't remember what year, but man, then they were on the road.
Yeah.
Was Donnie Ant already a big player at that time?
Donnie back then I think placed or won something at the nationals every year I worked at UKC.
Yeah.
That guy put together
In
a
the
streak of
registered
wins.
division. He always had a
if
young
he got
dog.
beaten registered, then he'd go win champions. I mean, that guy won something at every single nationals. I think a Yant won registered at the nationals like 4 or 5 years in a row. The 1 year Donnie did, and his nephew did.
Yeah.
You know, and Eric won them, and yeah, those guys are on a streak on that. But with the challenge series, you've got to say Barney Daly, Matt Daly, and Tim Holland. That was
They were at every event.
Oh, and I rode a lot of those events with them, and it was a lot of fun.
So who were they competing against? Was that during the days of Dirty Dan Bow?
Yeah, yep, Dirty Dan Bow with Merle. That's
Spicer.
Yeah, that's one of the better dogs I ever ran with. And Merle, it's kind of a funny story. They'd have hunts at the club, and nobody offered grands. So Merle would take Bo to the local club and go run by himself. If he had plus points, he'd go to the trophy store and buy his own trophy. The upper side of his barn was so full of trophies, and I couldn't help but wonder how many of those Merle bought for Bo.
He loved that dog.
Speaking of Merle, state hunts were part of the challenge series, right?
Yeah.
State hunts.
And that made them big.
Yeah.
I can remember hunting 150 dogs at our state hunt in Michigan in one day.
I've heard Matt Turner say he used to Merle was kind of Matt's mentor, I think, of sorts.
Matt was a little kid when he started coming.
Yeah.
He didn't have a driver's license. Merle hauled him around.
And didn't Merle have some type of a camper or something he'd come to these events with?
Yeah, he had an RV.
Yeah.
He had an RV, and he'd park it over at my house. He's probably parked it at everybody's house at some point, just so he and Matt could go to the hunt.
Yeah, I've heard Matt say, come over and stay at your house there, camp out at your house and build a fire. And Todd, you'd come over and play guitars.
Then we'd all end up being late to the hunt the next morning.
Gosh, that was the fun of it, though.
It was. I mean, it was fun to win, and it was fun to see good dogs run. But I mean, the people you met. I mean, I haven't been around for a while. I don't know how serious it is. I let them run casts over at my house, and I go out there and watch unless it's 20 degrees and blowing. I'm like, that's no fun. Go back to the house. But I remember the people probably more than I do the dogs from back then.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Dailies, the Ants, and who were some of the others?
What was Barney's good male dog that won a lot?
Levi.
Yeah.
Man, I hear hunting that thing, and he could gut a pack of dogs. He'd run 100 yards in front of the pack.
You know, he was around when he was running when I kind of first started coming into it or whatever. And I got to draw him one time up here in Michigan somewhere, probably out of Calaval, I'd say, at a qualifier. And I'm judging the cast, and I got Levi finally, Drew Levi. I really wanted to see how my dog would do against Levi. First track, I remember they're running down through there, and I can tell my dog's out in front. And I'm like, he ain't nothing. My dog's out in front. And I remember they're coming towards the edge. We're standing out in the open field. Here comes a pheasant.
Oops.
Here they all come. And mine has he's got him stretched out pretty good. Comes out there. I remember
that dog's
Barney
name was Walker, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I remember Barney said, "You sure that's what they're running?" I said, well, I'm pretty sure it is. They all came out right where the pheasant did.
Barney say, maybe she turned her head and a rabbit came through. We didn't see it.
That's the only time I got to draw him. I watched him run, but he was a tough hound. He won a lot too.
Their Abby dog would eat him up though. She was a
but
better
she was
dog.
she was a little different type of dog. Though.
Did Matt typically handle her?
Matt typically handled Levi because he was such a strong. Matt or Tim because they were younger.
Yeah.
Barney was older, so Barney knew what he was doing. He'd take Abby out. She's the easy handler, but Levi was. I mean, he wasn't like trash run or anything, but I mean that dog was when you had to catch him. You had your hands full.
Him up.
Yeah.
But another one I was thinking was Dave Henderson out in Missouri. He had an early hound that was really dominant out there.
Brush Buster.
Yeah, Henderson's Brush Buster.
I don't know how I remembered that.
Yeah, that was a powerful hound back in the day.
Yeah.
So how did it? You kind of backing up a little bit. So you were kind of local. It was kind of big on Michigan clubs, Indiana, Ohio clubs, some in West Virginia. But then Missouri. How did that happen? Why way out there?
I know why it happened because of the rabbit population. Yeah. I mean, that is a rabbit running state. And Beagles are huge out there.
Still is.
They got the rabbit, they got the cover, and they got the rabbit.
Yeah, it's a little bit different cover, but they've got a lot of it.
I think that's why it became popular, just the number of hounds out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never understood that. I mean, I know that program works on hair as good as it does on cottontail, but I was kind of surprised we never could. I mean, the scores would be low. You get a lot bigger circles, but I thought some of the northern hair clubs would go out and try it, but it's probably more conducive to large pack than it is to.
Yeah. So the world hunt, you mentioned that you said that was one thing you knew you were going to implement was a world hunt.
Yeah. I mean, it's the nationals is kind of like your autumn oaks.
Big reunion.
Yeah. Big reunion, more about fun. And then you go on to, then you have a world hunt and that's, elimination style to the end. And, the best dog wins, not the highest scoring dog. And that's kind of how the elimination hunts came in after that because everybody liked, go till you get beat instead of, back then you could come in with 400 points at your local club and not get a trophy because you didn't place in the top 10. So those dogs, or you get fifth and you didn't get a chance to compete for the winner's pack. So everybody was saying we need to do it elimination style. So we skipped over zones. We didn't do zones. We went right straight to the finals. And then the finals kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I put zones in, which is probably a bad decision. Should have just let it keep going straight to the final.
I remember that because I was working here at that time. So that had to be around 2005.
Yeah. And
I remember you and I were talking about it. And
yeah, I was hoping
Beaglers hated it.
That would keep it going bigger and bigger and bigger. But yeah, that was one of my bad decisions.
Well,
we've had some of this stuff that didn't.
Well, it didn't, and I think the way a lot of the Beaglers are looking, the World Championship should be the largest event, but it's not that way in any of our segments.
No,
it's not.
Supposed to decide who's the best dog.
Yeah.
You want to go to a reunion, go to the Nationals. You want to see the best dog, go to the World Hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still have fun and hang out with your buddies, but to me, it's on a little bit different level.
Different.
Yeah.
So I remember the first World Hunt was in 2000. And in Grafton, West Virginia. Right?
Yep,
West Virginia.
Promised Dale Pruning if he did all this stuff for me, help me do it, I'd give him the first one.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I was nervous.
Who won it now?
Larry Elliott with Whoopash, and that's a dog that I remember big. But her mom is the one I used to run with a lot.
Yeah.
And he used to win a lot with what was her name? Multiflora Falcon Lou.
Yeah, Larry did a lot of winning early. He had good hounds down there. Even if he didn't win the hunt, we'd always go shoot Sporting Clays or something afterwards.
Yeah.
But this was Whoopash, and I remember her well.
Yeah.
She could put a whooping on you.
Yeah, she was a nice
She did
hound.
it on a lot of dogs, yeah. So she won that first one, yeah.
Then we went to Michigan or something.
Scott's, up here at Kellam,
Michigan. Yeah. I still remember probably the maddest I ever saw Jeff Stacy. We just had a terrible cast in the finals. Ran it right next to my dad's house, and I think he got beat by like 5 points. And we had a neighbor coming out interfering with the dogs, and we had a gallery of probably 60 people surrounding that property. And it was probably little too much. We should have followed suit with what the Coonhounds did and phoned it in, but I don't think anybody even had a cell phone hardly back then. But
and then the second year, it was that Mark V's King Dog that won that one.
Yeah.
Won that one. He went on to be a huge reproducer.
Yeah, he did.
Still way up there in the reproducing list for us. And the other one that I remember a lot was Henry Sennett's Molly. He won the third one.
Yeah, I see he's back into Beagles
he is.
now.
He's still around.
Yeah, I see on Facebook. I see Henry Sennett with his Beagles.
Yeah.
He got out for a while. And
You remember old Molly?
Yep, Sennett's Molly.
Yeah.
Yep. He's a good dog.
And he was always a good guy to hunt
Oh,
with.
he's a great guy to
Still
hunt
is.
with. Yeah. When I see guys like that getting back into it, I have to think about getting back in.
Yeah. So what were some other world hunt stories? Anything you remember?
Good ones or bad ones?
Good ones. Probably should just talk about the good ones.
No, I mean it was neat. I mean it gave the Beagle world another major, title holder. You can, at the Nationals you'd be registered champion or grand for the Nationals in the hunt and the show. But now we haven't talked a bit about the show. We brought a show program in, and now we got a world champion for the show and the hunt. Hard part was you got to kind of go back to the coon hunters again, like when you're doing the show, to bring somebody in to judge your finals, because it's such a close-knit community that you can't have a beagler really that's been going around all these events and knows who's been winning at a local level. So we would bring in some of the top coonhound guys to do the bench show. And really the quality of dogs in the bench show got pretty tremendous.
They were good back in those days. And we still have nice dogs. You see a lot of them, but it was serious.
And people, I guess I was raised beagling by function first, and they got to hunt first. And I stood by that it's a working dog registry, and they're not getting in that show unless they can hunt. Now we did let them show at the world show without hunting in it, because if they got their qualification at a WQE,
right? And that's still the same today.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's they've got to be properly built to run, and not by other registry standards, by what UKC standard is an athletic dog that can run. And I think the UKC has always done a good job of keeping that in there, that because there's been breeds ruined in a show ring. Let's face it. And I don't think the Beagle has been. I think they're still an athletic animal that can.
All three of us ran coonhounds, and I probably ran more than you guys did. And we put a lot of emphasis on coonhounds running all night long. But I'm telling you, if you really put your Garmins on a coonhound during a night and put your Garmin on a Beagle, see who runs the furthest. You'd be surprised how many times the Beagles will run miles against the coonhounds.
Yeah, I believe it.
They do. And especially if you go run hare up north, it's nothing to run 12, 15 miles a day. And, you'll put 3-4 miles on a coonhound in a night, and that's about all you put on them.
Yeah, so they've got to be athletic.
They do. And
but back to that, so it was nice. So now we've got both
and put together
national show champions and world show champions along with the hunting part of it. And it was going good till I wrecked it and made zones.
But you only did that 1 year.
1 or 2 years. I think it was still zones when I left, and somebody was smart enough to change it.
No. Well, maybe it only happened. Maybe did you leave right after that or what?
I left in 2008, so I don't
2008.
know. I don't know when the changes were made, but it was a good decision
I'm pretty
take
sure
it
you
back.
only had it in for 1 year.
Yeah. It didn't work. I mean, we did a lot of things that worked. We did things that didn't work. I mean,
I remember you and I having that conversation about it, thinking, this is the best thing that you're doing. It's going to work. It's going to help it grow.
That's probably why it did, because you and I thought it was a good idea.
Maybe.
But it made, I wanted to have a world hunt where it was smaller, and you had maybe 15, 20 casts that went out, and you had 15 or 20 really good spots to run them, so you got them on quality running the whole time you're out there with good judging. I didn't want it to be 300 dogs, and this guy goes out and doesn't score plus. I wanted it where everybody got in good running, and hey, that's what they wanted, was a big hunt, so it was the right decision to go back to it, because you got to do what your customers want.
Yeah. So let's change gears, back up a little bit. Did you go to a lot of the world hunts, the first world hunts?
Oh, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at them.
Yeah. He went to all the nationals, most of the nationals when I was there.
Yeah.
Every one I was at, I remember.
I probably haven't been to one in don't know how many years now, though.
Been a while.
10.
Yeah.
He said if I leave, he's not going anymore.
And he didn't either.
Hey, no, the truth. No, what happened was I had to start focusing on some other parts of the company, right, and getting retrievers and getting pointing dogs going here, and that's a lot of trip road time right there. So you can't go to all of them.
Yeah, people don't understand is the number of weekends and time away from our families. And
Yeah.
when I left UKC, people are like, "Why are you doing that? You just left the greatest job in the world." I said, "If you like being gone 18 weekends a year, I mean, there's something to be said for being at home. I've got a job right now where I don't travel, and it's nice."
It is, and but we all like going on the road. I heard somebody say, one of the other registries managers or whatever talking, and I can agree and relate 100%. You kind of dread that trip once you're there. You're in your wheelhouse. You're glad you're here. It's all good, but it's do that 20, 25 times a year.
Especially being a beagler and driving to Southern Illinois for black and tan days. That's a real joy for a guy.
We still go there.
And the drive was terrible going down and back, but when you were there, you're having fun.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
and I had kids too, and they were getting older and being gone all that much time. But I wouldn't have traded. It was fun.
Yeah. So let's change gears a little bit. White River, houndsman, breeder, probably one of the biggest promoters of UKC.
Oh yeah, I've been gone for years. There might be somebody that surpassed him, but I can't imagine who it was. I kind of keep tabs on things on the internet and follow along. But
talking about Dale Pruning.
Yeah.
Dale
he's so well respected. He was a gentleman.
Yeah.
For one thing.
Yeah, he was, I was telling Todd a story where they had him judge the top 10 show finals at Premier, and he asked one of the other judges what breed that dog was. In the finals, he went over to one of the other judges and he says, "What breed of dog is that?" And these guys are all thinking, "Dumb Beagle judge. Why do they even have him here?" And they turned in their scorecards at the end, and all the judges picked the same dog to win top 10, and it was that dog that Dale didn't know what breed it was.
And Dale picked it.
Dale picked it just like the other judges. He didn't know what breed it was, but he knew it was the best dog in that ring. And so he's just a houndsman. He always was. He was a coon hunter and a beagler.
He had good coon dogs.
What do you think it was that he demanded the respect? Was it just his demeanor?
I think it is. He was professional.
Yeah. Yeah, he was great. He was probably one of the best things that ever happened to this sport with UKC.
Yeah, I remember the Nationals, even when you were still here and even after, he'd call every week.
Yep.
Every week he would call.
He called me every day.
And he would, at the Nationals or the World Hunt, he'd always be the first one up, going around the hotel, banging on doors and making sure guys are up.
Yeah, but he was part of the reason they were still sleeping. But yeah, I got to be, closest to friends with Dale. I'd go down there and deer hunt with his family. He'd have me down for opening day of deer season.
Yeah.
That was a good guy. And his hounds, not only were they top performers, but they were good looking dogs. His dogs were dual as they could be.
Well, he came from the coon hunting world too. Didn't he win a coon hunting world show?
One of his big Rick, White River Rick.
White River Rick,
big walker dog.
He and Kearns and those guys, they were friends. Lee Kearns.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the time we got with Dale was we were lucky because he had a brain aneurysm. If you saw him without his hat on, you could see where he had his surgery, and we got lucky to even get to know him. And he, I'm sure glad we did, but he was on borrowed time the whole time that he was with us.
Yeah. But
yeah, that guy, and then he put together a network of people that would handle dogs for him and raise puppies for him. And, I'd go to Dale's house and he'd have one dog. And he's got 50 in his name, but he's got one dog. He's got like Fire River Michael and Lulu at his house. That's all he had. His pride and joys were his house. You go down to Jason Vandergrift's and he's got a dozen dogs. You go to this guy's house, he's got a dozen. Ted Heldreth used to be in there. He had a bunch of dogs for him. But you'd be shocked when you go to Dale's. Two dogs.
You mentioned Lulu. We had our first junior national championship this year. The dog that won was off of Princess, who goes back to Kita, who was off of what is that? Hall's. What was that female's name? Hall's Abby, not Abby, but the Jake dog who was off of Michael.
Really?
Isn't that something?
That's probably the most famous cross, Michael and Lulu, that ever hit UKC Beagling.
Yeah.
But they must have bred them 30 times. I don't know. But every year it was Michael and Lulu cross. So
yeah, it's amazing how that some of those good dogs.
And the more he won, the more humble he became.
Yep.
He never bragged. You know, you want to go talk to him about his dogs. He'd want to talk about your dogs.
Yeah.
You know, I was actually privileged. You know, I was on cloud 9. He calls me up one time. He had a Michael and Lulu female that was a grand. He wanted to come up and breed it to my dog. And I thought I'd hit the big time. Dale Pruning wanting to breed to my dog.
You know, another thing I always remember about Dale was he was always the master hounds.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I remember, he was always the master hounds. But always seemed to me he got a lot of. But the one thing that was different with him than a lot of master hounds, it was over. Once he sent them out, it was all over, and you didn't hear any more bickering about it, really. Somehow he could just manage those and deal with those questions like he just had a good knack.
Oh, he made you feel good about losing. You know?
maybe.
You know, he would explain it properly and why he made his decision. He'd do it calmly. There wasn't any arguing, and that's just the way it was.
Yeah. I remember when I first came up here, we hired him to judge a couple of coonhound shows as well.
Yep.
Yeah, he loved
judged
that.
the World Coonhound Championship.
Yeah.
A couple times
both
rounds.
He loved it.
Yeah.
He loved anything like that.
He liked a good-looking dog.
Yeah.
Actually, the last Beagle I had that I've owned was from Dale. And she was a performance pack dog in the performance pack program. And her name was Peaches. And so
who ran her the most in the final years?
He did. He'd come over and get Peaches, and he'd
take your dog.
Yeah, just kind of went full circle. I just come get yours. You came and got mine, and then Dale passed away, and I still have his dog, and I didn't know what to do with her. I'm like, what do I do with this dog? And I called a couple of guys down there in West Virginia, and they're like, I don't know. We got a lot of that we got to deal with, and so. She was about a 6 or 7 year old dog, and I wasn't giving her the time and attention she needed. So I did what Dale would have done: gave her to a kid. So I think I gave her my tracking collar with it, and said, "If you ever lose her, come over and borrow my." It wasn't a Garmin back then, but yeah. So I did what Dale would have done and gave her away to a little kid that wanted to rabbit hunt.
Speaking of breeders, Morgan, another big breeder was Danny Dugan, who's also influential in the early days of this program.
Yeah, he was. Danny was the first one, I think, that got serious about buying genetics that worked in other registries. He got to be in with Branko Kirpan up in Canada, and Denny was bringing those harehounds down that weren't quite fast enough for large pack, and he's breeding some nice dogs, and Denny actually evolved to where he went back to the small pack, large pack stuff, but he was one of the first field reps we had, and still to this day I stay in contact with Denny. He's one of the few people that I talk with a lot. I mean, we had really good field reps in Ohio. We had him, we had Dave McVeigh, we had I'm drawing a blank right now, but
Chalfant?
Yeah, Ed Chalfant.
Ed
Chalfant. I mean, we had great ones there, but Denny was the first that was there, and he was kind of a guy like Dale Pruning. He was the Ohio version of Dale Pruning. He was very well respected. Denny was, just easygoing, had lots of land, just loved to run Beagles. All he does is go out and check his oil pumps to see how much money he made that day. So he doesn't have a lot to do. He's got he can run Beagles while he counts his money, I think. So that's for you, Denny.
And still does. Still has that.
Yeah, just the other day when gas hit $4, I said it's going to be a Merry Christmas at the Dugan house this year. But Denny was a quality guy, and that's, I mean, when you think about the first reps that we've had that we talked about, I mean, in Terry Runyon over in Illinois, I mean, they're all good quality people, and that's what I look for with these reps, is because, and I've made mistakes hiring some of them over the years. I'm not going to sit here and say every rep I hired was a good quality person. I've made poor choices on some, but the first group that came in were probably the most respected guys in the program, and not because they were winning, because of the type of people they were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember Danny was one of the guys when I was around.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some good dogs too. That mystery dog,
Branko's Mystery Man.
Mystery Man, yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen that dog a lot of times. My dog's seen the back of it a lot of times.
Yeah.
Trying to keep up.
And a lot of dogs after that too.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned Branko, that stuff was just kind of coming in about the time I started. And that's one of mentioned the first dogs I had, they didn't have enough foot. And that's what I went and got. Mine was my first dog was a grandpup off old Jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had foot and stamina, and they were nice dogs. But Denny saw that, and that's what needed to be added, and he brought that down. And he had his original dogs, but then he started breeding that in, and he kind of exclusively went that way later.
Yeah.
And he had a nice pack of hounds, and he wasn't like Dale, where he went to Dale's house and he had 2. Denny had a few more at his house.
Yeah.
And I always enjoyed going down there to his place and seeing.
You mentioned Ed Chelfin. I think he was from Ohio, somewhere in Ohio, probably around.
He's from right around Kilbuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So NHBA. I remember him as being one of the first guys in the NHBA and pushing the NHBA there at Kilbuck.
Actually, the logo for NHBA was designed by Ed. The logo that's on all the stuff, Ed designed that. And
that's for those that don't know, that's the National Hunting Beagle Association, or Chartered Breed Association.
And this is how sharp a guy Ed was. He came up with a tagline for it. So it's National Hunting Beagle Association, and it notarizes hound breeding achievement. So he had 2 things for NHBA. But Ed used to have his own business, and I firmly believe that part of the reason his business went under was because he spent so much time doing the NHBA stuff. I mean, he wore me out. I mean, the guy was all in. When he got into something, he was all in, and
You're right, he was.
He drove that thing, and he and like Angie Vandergrift, was a big help with that, and Dale, of course. But Ed went all in on that, and
he had this drive thing with something with a gold or a chartered gold members, and he was only doing 50 of them.
Yeah, we sold 50 charter members. Yeah,
I remember I bought one or got one of those that day at Kilbuck.
Yeah, I was telling Todd one day that when we set it up, it was whether it was going to be Fred Miller got number 1 or I got number 1, and they decided I got number 1. Fred got number 2.
Really?
Yep. So
that's
I was
cool.
worried I was going to be in trouble when I got back to work.
I'd like to see that list again, just see who's on that list. They probably have it on their website, I would assume.
And they sold so fast that then they went on to the gold memberships, which it was different voting rights. You could be just a general member, but you didn't get to vote on the stuff with the NHBA, but the charter and gold members got to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, and it looks like it's still doing good and going strong. And it's.
I think the association right now is as strong as it has ever been. Probably it's seen its ups and downs over the years, but it's right now again it's as strong as ever.
Yeah, and it was a good idea because UKC doesn't need to dictate breed standards, and that's why you have your breed associations with the coon hounds and stuff, so that you get some say from your breed association. And I don't ever remember that they had as much say as the coon hound ones, but they were another group of good people out there that made the program better. And so
it brought they bring more to the sport, right? More events and more series and more big events.
Oh, one of my trophies that I still have to this day, I've thrown most of them away, but I placed a dog at the NHBA days one time, and that was important to me. It was one of the first ones. So
that's one of my favorite events every year because it's kind of one you can go to relax and you can actually hunt a dog if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the advertising we did back in the old days. What were some of the magazines you advertised? American Beagler is one that comes to my mind, but there were probably others.
When I started, it was
Better Beagling.
Better Beagling with Bob Baker, wasn't it?
Bob and Pearl.
Bob and Pearl Baker, and they give me 4 pages a month, and I would fight with him. I need 6 pages. I need 6 pages. This is an AKC magazine. No, it's not. How many subscribers are you getting because of me? And I'm paying you. Sell me more pages. I think by the time I left,
I can hear that conversation.
I think it was unlimited by the time we left. Yeah. But they were the first one, and it was
primarily a large pack.
Yeah,
other than our stuff.
Yeah, and then we, of course, always put stuff in coonhound bloodlines. And back then, that was before people even had cell phones. You had to have in coonhound bloodlines to be official. And I'm like, you're going to make these beaglers by a coonhound magazine? So that moved over to Better Beagling, and then eventually went over to the American Beagler. which was nice because that was the right hours, and they were
supporters.
They were UKC supporters, and it was, I mean, the Bakers were great with Better Beagling, but we were always kind of the odd man out in that magazine, and so it was nice going to the American Beagler and with them, and Mike and Janie were awesome.
Yeah, they were. And Mike passed, and then Janie ended up selling the magazine, and sadly it's kind of dissolved now. It has, yeah. So we run some in Hounds and Hunting, which they merged, I think, Better Beagling and American Beagler to that one magazine, Hounds and Hunting.
Really?
Yeah. So, but the new owners are doing a great job with that magazine.
That's good.
I really like them. John.
It's a hard industry.
Yeah.
Hopefully they stick with it.
Yeah. John Porter. In your opinion, owners, breeders, handlers, who are some of those that you feel had some of the biggest impact on the program? Both of you.
Ooh, that's a hard question. We've talked about a lot of them.
I feel like we have hit the key
But
ones.
I mean,
one we haven't talked about is Shenango.
Oh yeah, that. I mean, when he
McFarland.
Bill McFarland, he was good, and then when he teamed up with Pruning, he was great. That Bill McFarland, yeah, he was another guy that was just a class act and had darn good dogs. But I mean, you could go through and name 100 people, and there's probably guys just like those guys that are on a local level at all these clubs back then. I mean, but yeah, Bill McFarland was definitely one of the top breeders.
Won a world hunt.
Yeah.
And then again, I think Roy, I mean, I don't know if we've touched on him enough, but he comes to my mind as being one of the ones who's done the most for Roy Swafford.
Yeah, he started when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Kid.
But
probably a teenager still.
Did a stint here on your team at UKC.
Yeah.
Another one's Eric Yant. I remember at our club when we started getting in an argument with Donnie and Charlie Martins, who's a great guy in beagling back then.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to let Eric measure the dogs at our club, and Eric was like 8. And I'm like, you can't let an 8-year-old measure dogs. It looks like we're not taking it serious. And Eric threw out more dogs for being too tall than anybody. But that kid, I mean, I think he studied rules more than his school book back in the days. That kid was at every hunt, everywhere he went, and he still does hunt.
He does, and he's still a preferred judge.
Yeah,
he's as stout as anybody out there.
Well, he got that from his dad and Charlie.
Yep, he did.
But yeah, but Eric, he was. I mean, I always thought he was the natural guy to take over when I left, but he had another job already doing pretty good. But he was somebody that's been around this program since the beginning. I mean, when our club formed, it was in the early days, and Eric was a little kid measuring dogs out front.
Yeah, going back to McFarland, he also loved training young dogs.
Yeah,
getting young dogs out there.
Yeah,
he won a lot of our junior series championships that we had.
Yeah, and you can just tell the guys when you meet them and you see their dogs run who are serious houndsmen, and their dogs Bill shows up, the dog doesn't have any hair the top inch of its tail, and that guy's putting the time in. And
probably for me has been the top rules guy was probably McFarland when he was still here. Who was that guy for you?
As far as being sharp with the rules?
Sharp with the rules.
Roy Swafford, hands
Roy.
down. Yeah, Roy was it. I mean, when I worked at UKC, if I got stumped, that's who I called. I mean, Dale Pruning was my good buddy, but Roy he's the rule guy that I relied on back then.
Yeah, I remember what McFarland was big on. He went by the book, and he had every copy of every article you ever wrote on the rules. And matter of fact, after you left, he sent me the whole book.
Did he really?
He did. Had all his little notes in there, and I scanned them all and have them on my computer still.
That's cool.
And I still go back to that stuff when I write articles, and it's amazing still how a lot of how the rules haven't changed.
Yeah.
And
you say that, but when I go and watch those casts out on my property, I'm amazed how much they have changed. I'm like, what are you doing? You can't do that. They're a lot different now.
Yeah, well, there's some that are different, but I'm talking the ones that haven't changed. The interpretation is still the same, doesn't change. So yeah. You also did a lot. We talked a lot of Beagles here, but you also did a lot for other segments at UKC. Coonhounds you mentioned. What were some of your other jobs that you did here?
Oh, at one point I was in charge of all the sponsorship stuff,
Yeah.
dealing with Purina and Pedigree back in the day, and Black Gold
Yeah.
dog food, dealing with all that. Just dispersing all that.
Vendors.
Yeah, I always got stuck by Todd. First day I'm hired. I started in November and Winter Classics in January, right? So I'm not going to Winter Classic. I'm the new guy. Well, Todd put me in charge of vendors and made me go to Winter Classic. I thought I was going to have this great, glorious job down there until you work with the guys in the vendor barn. Sometimes back then it wasn't really fun.
Yeah. Well, you were the Beagle guy when I came here, but I learned a lot from you going to those events, because you'd go to Winter Classic, Autumn Oaks, World Hunt.
Oh yeah, do the draw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it when you came so that you can start doing the vendors and.
Yeah.
But the other thing I did was in the Coonhounds was all the misconduct.
Oh yeah.
And that was probably my demise. I mean, I always say we deal with 20% of the people. The 10% that are trying to make it great and the 10% that are tearing it down. The other 80%, are just good people, that just like to go to hunts. And dealing with that lower 10% wasn't, it got on me after a while.
Yeah.
And I felt good that I was getting, if we suspended somebody and we did our due diligence and found that they did cheat, that we got them out of the sport to make it better for everybody else. But I didn't like that part.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it's something we still got to do,
Yeah.
So at some point, message boards came in.
Yeah.
Whose idea was that?
We didn't even want emails. Remember they told us we had to get emails?
The first message board I ever even saw was Coonhound Central. Remember that was that was like the first most popular hound message board. I don't remember when UKC's year we're talking.
They were big though.
But
It was big for the Beagle stuff.
Yeah, it was. I mean, because it was a great way for them to communicate, because we didn't for years have our own magazine until the American Beagler came around. So that's how everybody communicated. And it was good for the good parts and bad for the bad parts.
Yeah,
it took a lot of our time to keep it.
Yeah,
cleaned up.
Other platforms have kind of taken its place now, and they're kind of, our Coonhound one is still active, sort of, but most everything else is pretty much dead, just like any other forums, I guess. But
yeah, they serve their purpose in the day, but other things have taken over, and
I think we were able to address rules. That was probably the biggest benefit to a lot of people.
Right, and it was the only way we had to communicate with our customers instantly.
Right.
You know, because there were so many people on there, they could see it instantly. I mean,
you guys remember old Sheepster?
Well, he was on the Coonhound board.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't. Everybody.
You can go on there now still and see who's got the record number of posts. Right?
He's probably still up there.
Yeah.
He's got to be up there.
You would think somebody at UKC would have those records, but it wasn't.
No, because there's people that were on it more than us.
Yeah, I'm sure.
When I was still active on it, I was maybe, I don't know, maybe in the top 10, but near 10th.
Right.
Let's switch gears a little bit here. UKC Centennial. I want to say it was 1997-ish, maybe. I remember I was there, and I loved that event. It was Coonhounds, Beagles.
At the Kalamazoo Fairgrounds.
Yep. Loved that event. Whose idea was that, or how did that happen?
That was Fred Miller. 100%.
I would honestly say that was Fred and Connie. That was their idea to have a big celebration, and it was important to Fred.
Right.
That's why it happened 1 year early.
Yeah, because Fred's health wasn't very good. So
1898 to 1997.
And Fred explained to us the math on how that is the 100th year, but it's not 100 years. We were the start of the 100th year, but we haven't completed it, so it counts.
Yeah.
But it was a cool event.
It was, similar to what Premier later became, I would think, except for the hunt. So all the way down on the one end where the 4-H barns were, we've had Beagles and Coonhound. We did a Beagle hunt and a Coonhound night hunt.
Yep. I loved it. I thought it was the neatest thing UKC did.
I don't believe we had a hunting retriever event. And, hindsight, I wish we could have done it.
Yeah, but that was pretty cool.
That was part of the reason why I got hired when I did, because that was coming up too, the following spring or summer.
Yeah.
And so not only was Todd in there by himself, we got this premiere or the Centennial show.
Well, it wasn't just the Centennial event; it was a Centennial book too. Remember how much work that thing was?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's a great archive. Man, that was a lot of work.
Yeah,
That Centennial.
Yeah.
I'm glad I missed.
It's a good
most of it.
resource, so I still refer to it all the
Yeah.
time.
So, what were you guys' favorite parts of the Beagle program from any part of it, from the beginning on?
Well, okay, for me, I think I've already touched on both of them. The first favorite part is just starting with a set of rules that no one had ever tried, right? Maybe it's going to be successful, maybe it's not. It is for these big dogs, but can you do rabbit hunts the same way? I think that was I'm most happy about. But my favorite part was, like I said earlier, the first days when everybody just brought their rabbit dog that they had tied up on back. Those were my favorite.
Well, one of the things that was so different at that time, was it not, was the perception of a judge handling and calling his own, judging their own dog.
Yeah.
That was unlike any other
other Beagle field
Yeah.
trial. Yeah. So different. And
if done right, it works.
It works, and it still works. But there's still people that can't wrap their head around that. They're not used to that. That can't wrap their head around how that works, but it actually works.
People say, well, then we need to call them a scorekeeper. Nope, they're the judge.
Yeah.
They are the judge.
Morgan, what about you? What are some of your favorite?
Other than the early stuff that he talked about, I loved the Beagle Nationals. I loved it. That was my favorite thing of the year. And, just because you got to see everybody. I mean, you could go to all these local hunts and see a lot of people, but back then, everybody went to the Nationals. When we moved it down there to Coshocton with Dave McVeigh and those guys building that thing up, it just got huge. And that was by far my favorite thing, is go to the Nationals. It was the most work I ever did for an event, the earliest mornings, the latest nights, but I love the Beagle Nationals.
For me, I like how all of them are a little different. If they were all the same, they'd probably get a little boring, but they are, and the Nationals is a good one.
Yeah.
Different than the World.
And HBA days.
And HBA days is different.
And being away from it this long, it's not even the dogs anymore. It's the people.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I met that, amazingly, I'm good friends with.
Yeah.
I was driving down the highway to my son's baseball game the other day, and I saw an exit for Coshocton, Ohio, and I took a picture of it, sent it to Dave McVeigh, talked to him for an hour on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and we went right down by West Virginia where we were going, and you just sit there thinking about all the fun times you had with Dale Pruning or Clyde Hanning or those guys down there.
We talked a little bit about the show dogs. Clyde's one of them, won some of those big shows, world shows and things like that in the
early years. White River dogs that Clyde had?
Initially they weren't, but I believe they weren't, but at the end they were.
Yeah.
He had Elvis, and what were some of those first dogs? He had Smooth Moving Elvis, seems like.
Yeah, I've probably laughed at that guy more, Clyde Hanning, than anybody in all of beagling. That was a funny man.
He was. When Roy took over the Beagle stuff there for a year or two, but he hired Clyde to judge the World Show.
Yeah.
Good at it, too.
He was.
He'd take it as serious as anybody, and then
he did
joke as hard as anyone afterwards. But
yeah.
He knew a good dog, too.
Oh,
he learned from the best down there.
Yeah, so Todd, I'd say probably had to be one of your proudest moments after all this is being inducted into the NHBA's Hall of Fame.
It was. That was pretty cool. And, I'd been out of it for a while, and Matt Turner nominated me. And it was once again, the coolest part was going down there to get my jacket and see all the people, and catching up with people that I hadn't seen in a while. And back then, Coy Stacy was still alive, and got to hang out with Coy. He's one of my favorites of all time, and just got to see everybody again. And it was an honor. It was cool when I got dogs in the Hall of Fame. It was emotional when I got it.
Were there a lot of people there, faces you didn't recognize?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've gone over to a couple of Beagle Clubs local, and I don't recognize half the people. I've been out a while, but that was, that meant a lot to me. I wear that jacket everywhere I go. Got it in a special spot. Someday my kids will ask me, "What's this?" or my grandkids will, but it's that meant a lot to me getting in there.
I'm sure it did. It would anybody, I think. So
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should probably think about wrapping this up.
So go back one more thing before we close. You talk about the face, like it'd be the same for me going back to an event now, not recognizing a lot of the people, but those people that we don't recognize are the ones that can gain the most from our effort to do like this podcast.
Yeah.
Where we're talking about the early days, the early dogs, the early people.
Yeah. I'm sure the next Dale Pruning, the next is sitting at some club that nobody's met yet.
Right.
And he's a new guy coming in.
Roy, Matt Turner, the guys that are still in it, they already know what we're talking about. Those younger guys that are new people that are in it, they don't know all these names of people.
That's right. And we call it the good old days. Some of us, the older guys do or whatever, really right now are the good old days for a lot of the younger guys that are in it.
Yeah.
It is just the way it is. So yeah, let's wrap this up. You guys got any?
I just hope the program keeps going and people keep doing it for the right reason, to have fun. And, the dogs are a lot of times secondary. We're there to title them out and see who has the best dog. But just hopefully they just keep doing it for the right reason. Be a gentleman or lady out there in the cast and help people out and make the sport keep growing, and it'll be around forever.
Yeah.
Appreciate everybody being here today. And thanks to Todd Morgan for coming in.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciated working with you when you were here. You taught me a lot, Todd. And
you likewise, you taught me a lot.
So thank you for coming in and taking the time to do this, and sure enjoyed talking about some of the old times with the Hunting Beagle program. That said, we'll close it out, and we'll see everybody next time on the next one. Thanks for listening to the UKC Hunting Ops podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and to like and follow UKC Hunting Ops on Facebook and Instagram.